Hi everybody, this is Michael Hildebrand and I'm your host on the Sleeptrust podcast, where I'm talking about how to gain back trust in your ability to have a superb sleep again. In this week's episode of the Sleeptrust podcast, we are going to talk about faith and how faith in our capabilities to sleep can really boost our sleep trust and can essentially really be the game changer when it comes to getting back and finding back to superb sleep again. And even though this topic is super important and fundamental when it comes to getting back, finding back to superb sleep, it is a topic that I have a hard time to speak about quite a lot, because for people out there, and I'm not sitting face to face to you, that have already tried so much to find back to superb sleep, it may feel a little bit ignorant if somebody says you just have to believe, have the faith that you can have a superb sleep and eventually you will have a superb sleep again. So I hope that you kind of join me on this podcast, even though you might think and say and be right that you already tested everything, but just to follow on what other smart people, not typically sleep-related people, what other smart people do to achieve things that they really want to have and eventually really have. Because the structure is the same for every single thing that we do on this planet called Earth. And I think it's going to be really helpful. And if it's not, going to help you in regards to sleep, which is an option too, then you'll definitely have learned something for other aspects of your life, and you can apply it just the same way. So when we're talking about faith or belief in our capability to have a superb sleep, and the circumstances at the moment are just different. So let's say we have kind of issues falling asleep or sleeping the hours that we really would need to get to feel good the next day, or we're not getting the quality of sleep that we need. So that means that the thing that we want to have is actually very different from the thing that we are really experiencing in reality. And this is a challenge. So what we're really talking about is the capability of imagination. And imagination is one, if not the most powerful tool that we humans are capable of using. When it comes to Einstein, he said things like, logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. So it's really powerful. And Einstein that's only a side note here, but he was a really long, good sleeper. He slept 10 hours a day with no regret. So it's also interesting from that aspect. But if we break it down to logic will get you from A to B, imagination will take you everywhere, what this means for me is that if you use logic, so logic, let's say, is the things we know, the things we can touch, that our reality, it's basically as if we're using a map. We see point A, we see point B, and we just have to use the map to get there. But when we talk about imagination, there is no such thing as a B that we have to go to. We could go to C, D, we could invent a picture that only exists in our mind, in our imagination. And the belief in our faith will eventually drive us to get there. We don't need a map. We don't need to know our concrete actions. Just imagining the goal will be enough to fuel us if we believe that we can reach it, if we have the faith that we will, and eventually we will land there. And this is exactly how Einstein did his work, and how many, many others, successful people, reach their goals, reach health-related goals, things that we would consider to be success, and also things like sleep. So let's take this down to a practical level. And fortunately, there is a super concrete way to reach imaginary goals. And there's a book out there that is well proven. It's must be almost 100 years old. It's from a guy called Napoleon Hill, and it's called Think and Grow Rich. And this book is, as you would guess, a description on how you can come to riches, but it really isn't, because it's all about the process of having a vision, having an imaginary goal, and building up the belief, the faith that you can reach it, and taking action accordingly. And there's a very clear 6-step process that the book walks you through, and I'm going to walk you through in just a minute from now. And if you do so, you will most definitely reach your goal. But you have to follow the process. It is a little bit of work. It sounds simple, 6 steps, and it actually is simple, but it's not particularly easy. You have to think, you have to write down things, and you have to commit to doing certain actions every single day. And that's basically how the structure of success in any area works. As said, you can put it into financial success, relationships, good relationships, sleep, you name it. It all works the same. So let's have a look at the 6-step process that Napoleon Hill lays out. And by the way, he interviewed 500 of the most successful people at that time. And I think it took him almost 30 years to analyze and to write this book. So you should really consider to buy this book and to listen to what Napoleon Hill has to say to us. So step 1 is fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. So in regards to sleep, it's not enough to say, I want to have a good sleep. Just get really concrete. Do you want to sleep more hours? Do you want to fall asleep faster? Do you want to get out of bed easier? Do you want to feel refreshed the next day? What is it that you exactly desire? And think about throwing on your imagination. Think about what you really want. Why are you doing this? This is the first part. And in regards to thinking about it, I really mean to think about it. Just don't go the easy route here and say, I just want to sleep better. Get really concrete. Imagine what you really want. And this is the thinking process. When it comes to Bob Proctor, he said 2% of the people think, 3% of the people out there think they think, and 95% would rather die than to think. So please do yourself a favor, do me a favor, jump onto the side of the 2% and think about what you really want here, write it down, and that's already, I think, a big step made. So second point, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. So what are you going to give for the sleep that you're going to get? What are you willing to give up? Are you going to quit drinking alcohol in the evening? Are you going to quit smoking? Are you really going to stop watching TV in your bed? Are you going to take the steps that it takes to achieve the goal that you want? What are you willing to pay? Everything has a price, and it's not as if a price is always a bad thing. It's just a consequence. So think about it not like paying. Think more about what are you willing to share in regards to getting what you want to have. How important is this really for you? Are you committed to give the things that you would just say you would, but when it comes to the daily actions, that's really important. Step number 3 is establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. So when do you want to have your superb sleep? Write down a date. Write down a date that really feels realistic to you when you see what you want to have, you know what you're willing to pay for it, and what do you think is the period of time that it will take to work your way through. Remember, faith and belief is going to drive you and going to tell you which actions are appropriate to achieve your goal, but you have to consider that it will take a little bit of time and just note it down. Then, the 4th, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. So plan out the steps. Get clear about what you want to do. It doesn't have to be super sophisticated, but you have to, on a certain level, you have to think about what you're planning to do. Maybe you're going to start with little actions, putting all of your screens out of your bedroom. It could be something completely different. Just think about what your plan is and just put down a couple of bullets. It's not a specific plan, as you can see here, whether you're ready or not to put this plan into action. So you need a high-level plan, and you start to execute on that. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire, name the time limit for its acquisition, state what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. So now you're going to write out all of the things that you thought about in point 1 to 4, and put it down on a little kind of a card or a piece of paper. And the 6th point is to read your written statement aloud twice a day, once just before retiring at night and once after rising in the morning. So you're going to condition yourself to read what you want, what you're going to give up for it, and what you're going to do until when you want to reach that goal. And that way you're going to start to believe the things that you have on that paper. You're going to see your progress. All your actions are going to be aligned to really reach that superb sleep again. And I think it's always a good idea to listen to people who are really successful, who have proven that they know what they're talking about. And Napoleon Hill is certainly one of those guys you can trust. And come to another book that's called Anti-Fragile. He's put out in some statement, I think it was that book, he said, if you are looking for really good books, don't look for the bestsellers. Look for books that you can find after 5 years, after 10, after 50, because good books tend to survive. If there's something out of longer lasting value in there, they will still be there after a longer period of time. And so this book is almost 100 years old. There must be something in there that is worth reading. After talking that long about Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, I didn't even intend to do so, but after doing so that long, I'm definitely going to throw in a link where you can buy the book at Amazon. You may also want to get it in your local bookstore, but consider getting the book and reading it, because it has so much depth and he takes different angles on the same topic, which is really helpful. I read it a couple of times on my own, and I'm going to read it another couple of times, I'm quite sure, because it's just got so much depth in it. So let's wrap up this week's episode of the Sleeptrust podcast together. When we want to use faith and belief to get back to superb sleep, imagination is a key skill that we want to use. Instead of using a map, we're going to use Napoleon Hill's 6-step process to bring us back to superb sleep. Step 1, we're going to note down how exactly superb sleep looks for us. Step 2, we're going to write down the price that we're willing to pay in terms of the trade-offs we're going to have. In step 3, we're going to write down a concrete date till when we will have reached that goal. Step 4, we're going to put down a brief plan, even if we do not know how we can execute on that plan right now. In step 5, we're going to write down all of this on a sheet of paper. So steps 1 to 4. And step 6 is reading this twice a day. First time right before you go to bed, and second time right after you wake up. And that's it for this week's episode of the Sleeptrust podcast. I hope you enjoyed yourself and that you tune in next week when we're going to have a look at how our sleep changes when we're aging. Until then, have a superb sleep. Hey there, and thanks for listening to the Sleeptrust podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want to get further information on this podcast or material that will help you to gain back your sleep trust, please check out sleeptrust.eu. That's sleeptrust.eu, where you will get lots of information around sleep. And here comes some legal stuff. Everything on this podcast is my opinion only, so do not take it as an advice. as I am not a doctor, nor have I considered your personal situation. If you feel that you need medical advice, please consider getting an appointment at your doctor of trust. If you want to give me any kind of feedback on this podcast, feel free to email me at podcast@sleeptrust.eu. I hope you tune in again next week, and until then, have a good sleep.